Good morning, you guys. Your crazy coach lady, Amanda Trombley here, and I am so excited to bring you this next video of our little mini series, Chaos Course Correction. Today we are talking all about the fight response, the survival mechanism that is completely and totally natural to us. We're going to be talking about what we're experiencing in our body as this happens, and exactly what to do to pull out of living in a crisis mode and moving to balancing with the flight method so that we can come through crisis mode with ease and rationality. So the first thing that I want to say is that this is completely and totally normal. So don't shy away from the fact that this panic or this anger, this irritation, this fight symptom is what you're feeling. Because you are suffering from a crisis, because there are massive changes to your schedule, to your life, to your finances, to your ability to provide, to the time you spend at home, to this and this and that, you're experiencing a crisis. And so your brain's way of protecting you from this crisis, your brain's way of blocking out any further suffering or pain is to move into this survival technique. And this is completely normal and totally okay for you to be experiencing. And when we begin to tell ourselves that what we're experiencing is not normal, is not okay, is not good for our system, we actually get stuck further in this cycle with our brain where we're trying to protect ourselves from this pain. And so we want to just release this notion that what we're experiencing right now is not well, is not normal, is not okay. And we want to we want to lean into the thought that what we're experiencing is okay, is totally normal, and is protecting you fully. And so once you move through that idea that we no longer need to be shamed or pained by this new system that we're experiencing, but instead lean into this system and ask it a few questions about how it can help us grow, we begin to move through an awareness part of this fight or flight method that will actually allow us to better understand it and better navigate the process. Now, a big part of the problem with the fight method is that you get stuck into this side of the method because of the way that you're raised, because of your normal thought patterns, because of your processing. You're either going to lean to one side or the other of fight or flight. And so this video is all about leaning to that fight side. And when we lean to that fight side, we feel all of this excess emotionality, or we begin to become on edge. We're irritated, we're angry, we're easy to jump to it because we're living in a constant state of crisis, which is pushing us to the fight method. And again, this is not a bad thing. This is your natural response, but we do want to learn exactly the techniques to move through this. So a few of the things that actually happens to your body that creates the emotions that you're feeling are very chemical and biological and completely natural. When we move into a fight or flight response, our heart rate actually increases as adrenaline is surged to us. And when our heart rate increases to the extent that it does during a crisis, our vision is actually blurred up to 70%. When we have an increased heart rate, adrenaline surging through our brain, and a blurred vision, our decision-making skills actually go completely out the window. And so if you're somebody that commonly reacts to bad situations in a crisis mode where you're snapping at the kids, or all of a sudden so stressed out that you can't make a simple decision, or you just brain fart constantly, this is totally common, and this isn't a response because you're stupid or you're dumb or because you can't handle things, but this is actually the brain's response to what you are feeling physically. And so when our decision-making skills decrease, our heart rate is increased, our vision is blurred, not only are we experiencing decision-making skills that are not up to total par, but our sensory awareness also decreases dramatically. And so what this looks like is we take any given situation, because we're already operating from that crisis mode, any given situation in our daily life looks so tunneled vision, and we begin to focus or fixate on singularity issues in our lives that begin to explode into even greater demise. We lose the ability to make rational decisions or respond calmly in a manner, we lose this outside vision and we begin to tunnel in and focus in a negative way on any situation that we're dealing with. And so this is where we see the anxiety, the panic, the anger, the snapping at our spouses, the inability to do the everyday things with a calm and rational sense. Some of the other symptoms that we experience in the body, which we all know well, is that when we're stressed out, when we are experiencing tension, our body fully takes on this tension and this stress just as well. And so pressure and pain in your neck, in your back, your entire body begins to feel this pressure and stress that you are taking on, which further disconnects you from enjoyment, from rational thinking, from being able to truly explore your life in the now. As we increase this pain, we also feel other symptoms that often go unnoticed, like a clenched jaw, which increases the tension and pressure in our neck and shoulders. We begin to ball our fists or stomp our feet, and these things become such natural reactions to where we're not even consciously aware that we become so pent up and tense inside. And so we want to learn a little bit about, now that we know a little bit about what's happening to our bodies, we want to do a little bit of work to refocus the energy in a positive direction so we can move through this crisis and actually feel the freedom, not only emotionally but physically as well, regardless of the crisis that we're experiencing. So exactly what do? We know that we want to pull away from this literal blood boiling reaction that we're facing. So how do we do this? The first thing that I want to tell you guys, which is what I say in every single video, in every single program that I create, in every conversation with clients, is that awareness is absolutely your first step to moving forward. 100% awareness is your first step in moving forward in any area of your life. As we've talked about before, awareness has a couple different sub parts of it. And the way that I like to look at awareness is in 3 parts. It serves to protect you, it serves to have a sense of creation in your life, and it can also serve as transcendence. And if we are not first aware of what is happening in our brain, in our mind, and in our response mechanisms, we are not able to move forward in any way, shape, or form. And what happens here is we immediately begin to feel a negative response of awareness, protection, and of awareness in light of a negative response to creation, protection, and transcendence. And so this lack of awareness in our lives, even it's still there on the surface, it's still building, but it's building in a negative sense. And so when we open ourselves up to being aware of everything we just talked about, what's actually happening in our body, what's happening in our brain, and then begin to open up to what's happening in our thought cycles, we begin to shift this awareness to a positive light where we can take positive reactions to protect ourselves, positive reactions to create new things in our lives, and positive reactions to actually move us through towards total transcendence. So the biggest key point here in understanding and moving through your fight mechanism of crisis mode is to become aware of exactly what you are experiencing, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. When we do so, we naturally move ourselves up to the next part of this process, which allows us to slow down and begin to track what's happening. So when we're here and we're aware that we're in crisis mode and we need to do something about it, and we just take a few minutes to look inside and see, become aware, see, feel, what are we feeling, what are we experiencing, what pressures are tensed right now, where are we feeling pain, mentally what is happening, is our heart racing, so on and so forth. We get this positive side of awareness, and we can move on to the next step, which is slowing down and spending that time with yourself to reconnect, to release the tension, and to step back into a mode that isn't crisis, that actually allows us to connect to the present tense away from our crisis so we can make the rational decisions we need to do. So once we've spent some time becoming aware of exactly what's transpiring in our bodies, in our brain, and in our mental filter, we need to slow down a tad, and we need to do a little bit of breathing. So the most common breathing techniques that there are is the box count breathing, which you've probably been hearing if you're anything like me since you were a child. It's so commonly used, but in my practice, I like to take it a step further and do the nostril breathing, which is a little bit more intense and allows you to have a little bit more on one-on-one time connecting with your body. And if you don't know the exact steps to the nostril breathing, please check my other video titled Breathing Techniques so you can get the full picture on exactly what the nostril breathing looks like, as well as the box count breathing and a few other breathing techniques that you can use on your children and yourself. And so first we step to this point to where we become aware to what we're processing through, and then we have the opportunity to breathe through it, to slow down and begin to connect with ourselves. The beautiful thing about slowing down and connecting with ourselves is it actually undoes all the work physically that our crisis mode has done. It starts to slow the heart rate down, which increases the vision and the sensory awareness, as well as stops the hormones from surging through your body, so you actually come to a physical state of readiness and presentness rather than living in the state that's being operated by the chemicals and the hormones surging through your body. And so now we're at breathing, and we've moved through that moment in time to where we're here and we're now, and it's time to do something really serious about what we're suffering from. Now, so much of our crisis, although is physical, is also magnified by the thoughts that we are thinking and the pattern of thinking that we've gotten stuck into. And so the next part of this crisis mode, in order to break free from this crisis mode itself, is to move to my specific thought tracking technique, which takes you and breaks you down all of your thoughts one by one and allows you to ask yourself 5 questions in order to recognize their validity and move through with a positive affirmation and a positive action both in the now and in the future, which allows this new way of thinking to actually reprogram you without any effort on your part. And so if you haven't heard my thought tracking video before, if you haven't heard this thought tracking technique, we do of course have a video out there titled Thought Tracking, and this will give you the full step-by-step approach of exactly what I do with my one-on-one clients to move them through any sort of anxiety, crisis, depression, and completely realign their lives to a new way of thinking simply by identifying those thoughts and taking some small action steps. The next thing that I want you to do here in order to move through crisis, we've become aware, we've slowed our bodies down, and we've now pinpointed our thoughts and taken a couple of small actions. The last step here is to really create an action plan for you that works based off of the crisis that you are dealing with. In a lot of situations, we can actually prepare ourselves for crisis. Perhaps the most stressful time of your day is while you're cooking dinner, because you have the dogs coming in and out of the kitchen and the husband outside not helping and the kids running all around, and so-and-so's hungry and so-and-so needs this, and now your attention is stressed in 1,000 different ways. No matter what you do each and every day, this time of the day is going to look rather similar to each other. And so it's your job to create an action plan around this stress. Perhaps your most stressful time of the day is getting up and getting ready in the morning, trying to get the kids out the door for school, or trying to get yourself to work. And so there is an action plan that you can take here because you are already anticipating the crisis that you are going to face in every single day. And so we need to begin to prepare ourselves to face these, so every time that they come up, they're not immediately bumping us back into that crisis mode, but we're prepared for it and living in the rationale before the crisis exists. And so begin to create an action plan, identifying where those trigger points are. Is it your financial situation? Is it your work situation? Is it your relationship with your spouse or your children? Is it specific times of the day that you are feeling this? Or is it fears that you have yet to explore that is causing this thinking to disarray to create a crisis in your life. Identify what your triggers are for your crisis mode, for your fight mode, and begin to create a battle action plan to prepare yourself for experiencing these in rationale. Years and years and years ago, I did 6 months in jail, and in order to get out, we had to present the parole board with a relapse prevention plan that detailed every little bit of trigger that we could face. What happened if our families began using? What happened if we were asked to use drugs? What happened if we were in a situation that we couldn't get out of? And we had to prepare ourselves to face the best days and the worst days. And I'm someone who always takes projects very, very seriously, especially when I can do them in a pretty fancy format. And so I took this relapse prevention plan 100% serious. And I can honestly tell you that I faced every single thing on that relapse prevention plan in the last 11 years. Every single thing that I wrote down, I have faced. And I had a little bit of a window into it to see exactly how I would handle situations. When we become prepared for the fight, we act more rationally because we have a plan to fall back on. So your plan is going to vary from person to person depending on the crisis and the emotional sufferings that you're dealing with. But create a battle action plan that you can use in your everyday life, which is going to save you from experiencing too much of this crisis. And the first thing that I think that you should put on your battle action plan, regardless of what it is some method of slowing down. You need to be able to be comfortable enough with yourself to where you can take that time to breathe and have a second before any crisis arrives, or that you can begin to pull yourself out of any crisis as it's arising using these slow down techniques. So our next video is going to go all on the opposite side of this, and we're going to be talking about the flight response that many of us deal with. I hope you liked this video and make sure to stay tuned for more.